Harper Audio presents the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Reese and Jack Trout, read by the authors. Hello, I'm Jack Trout. I'll be reading the introduction and the even-numbered chapters. My partner Al Reese will be along to read the odd-numbered chapters as well as the ending. On this tape, you will find the fundamental laws of marketing described in some detail. Once you open your mind to the possibility that there are immutable laws of marketing, it's easy to see what they are. In truth, they are obvious. We have been studying what works in marketing and what doesn't work for 25 years. What we have found is that programs that work are almost always in tune with some fundamental force in the marketplace. And you can build a brilliant marketing program only to have one of the immutable laws knock you flat if you don't know what they are. After years of working on marketing principles and problems, we have distilled our findings into the basic laws that govern success or failure in the marketplace. We call these principles the immutable laws of marketing, and there are 22 of them. Violate them at your own risk.
Hi, I'm Al Reese, and here's the first immutable law of marketing. 1. The law of leadership. It's better to be first than it is to be better. The basic issue in marketing is creating a category you can be first in. It's much easier to get into the mind first than to try to convince someone you have a better product than the one that did get into the mind first. The law of leadership applies to any product, any brand, any category. The law of leadership also applies to magazines, which is why Time leads Newsweek, People leads Us, and Playboy leads Penthouse. The law of leadership applies equally as well to hard categories like automobiles and computers. Jeep was the first in four-wheel drive off-the-road vehicles. Acura was first in luxury Japanese cars. IBM was the first in mainframe computers. Sun was first in workstations. Jeep, Acura, IBM, and Sun are all leading brands. The first minivan was introduced by Chrysler. Today, Chrysler has only 10% of the car market, but 50% of the minivan market. Is the essence of car marketing making better cars or getting into the market first? The first desktop laser printer was introduced by a computer company, Hewlett-Packard. Today, HP has only 5% of the personal computer market, but 45% of the laser printer market. One reason the first brand tends to maintain its leadership is because the name often becomes generic. Xerox, the first plain paper copier, became the name for all plain paper copiers. People will stand in front of a Ricoh or a Sharp or a Kodak machine and say, "How do I make a Xerox copy?" They will ask for the Kleenex when the box clearly says Scott. They will offer you a Coke when all they have is Pepsi-Cola. How many people ask for cellophane tape instead of Scotch tape? Not many. Most people use brand names when they become generic. Band-Aids, fiberglass, Formica, Gore-Tex, Jell-O, Crazy Glue, Q-tips, Saran Wrap, and Velcro, to name a few. If you're introducing the first brand in a new category, you should always try to select a name that can work generically. Lawyers advise the opposite, but what do they know about the laws of marketing? Not only does the first brand usually become the leader, but also the sales order of follow-up brands often matches the order of their introductions. The best example is ibuprofen. Advil was first, Nuprin was second, and Metaprin was third. That's exactly the order they now enjoy. Advil has 64% of the ibuprofen market, Nuprin has 20%, and Metaprin has 8%. The fourth brand that entered the market was Motrin IB. Even though it had the powerful prescription name for ibuprofen, Motrin's market share is even less than Metaprin. Keep in mind that Advil was introduced with a same as Motrin theme. Also consider Tylenol, the first brand of acetaminophen. Tylenol is so far ahead of the number 2 brand that it's hard to determine who is number 2. If the secret of success is getting into the mind first, what strategy are most companies committed to? It's the better product strategy. The latest and hottest subject in business management field today is called benchmarking. Touted as the ultimate competitive strategy, benchmarking is the process of comparing and evaluating your company's products against the best in the industry. It's an essential element in a process often called total quality management. Unfortunately, benchmarking doesn't work. Regardless of reality, people perceive the first product into the mind as superior. Marketing is the battle of perceptions, not products. What's the name of the first brand of aspirin? The first brand of acetaminophen? The first brand of ibuprofen? Hint: substitute leading for first, and you'll have the answers to these three questions. Neil Armstrong was the first person to walk on the moon. Who was second? George Washington was the first president of the United States. Who was second? Thomas's was the first brand of English muffin. What was the second? If you're second in the mind, are you doomed to languish forever with Buzz Aldrin, John Adams, and some unknown English muffin? Not necessarily. Fortunately, there are other laws.
2. The law of the category. If you can't be first in a category, set up a new category you can be first in. Is marketing difficult? No. The laws of marketing are quite simple. Working things out in practice is quite another matter. Cray Research went over the top with the first supercomputer. Today, Cray is an $800 million company. So Convex put two and two together and launched the first mini supercomputer. Today, Convex is a $200 million company. Sometimes you can turn an also-ran into a winner by inventing a new category. Commodore was just another manufacturer of home personal computers that weren't going anywhere until they positioned the Amiga as the first multimedia computer. Today, the Commodore Amiga is a big success. More than $500 million worth are sold annually. When you launch a new product, the first question to ask yourself is not, how is this product better than the competition? First question to ask is, first what? In other words, what category is this product first in? Charles Schwab didn't open a better brokerage firm. He opened the first discount broker. Today, Charles Schwab is America's largest discount broker. Lear's was not the first women's magazine, but it was the first magazine for the mature woman. This is counter to classic marketing thinking, which is brand-oriented. How do I get people to prefer my brand? Forget the brand. Think categories. Prospects are on the defensive when it comes to brands. Everyone talks about why their brand is better. But prospects do have an open mind when it comes to categories. Everyone is interested in what's new. Few people are interested in what's better. When you're first in a new category, promote the category. In essence, you have no competition. Digital Equipment told its prospects why they ought to buy a mini-computer, not a DEC mini-computer. In the early days, Hertz sold a rent-a-car service. Coca-Cola sold refreshment. The marketing programs of both companies were more effective back then. Yet most companies are brand-oriented. They think brands, they talk brands, they promote brands, when they should be focused on categories. Ask yourself, what category can we be first in? After you have invented a category, you can spend all your efforts promoting the merits of the category. You're the leader, and you can sit back and enjoy all the benefits of leadership.
3. The law of the mind. It's better to be first in the prospect's mind than to be first in the marketplace. Dumont invented the first commercial television set. Duryea introduced the first automobile, and Hurley introduced the first washing machine. All are gone. Is something wrong with the law of leadership? No, but the law of the mind modifies the law of leadership. It's better to be first in the mind than it is to be first in the marketplace, which, if anything, understates the importance of being first in the mind. Being first in the mind is everything in marketing. Being first in the marketplace is important only to the extent that it allows you to get into the mind first. For example, IBM wasn't first in the marketplace with a mainframe computer. Remington was first with UNIVAC. But thanks to a massive marketing effort, IBM got into the mind first and won the computer battle early. The law of the mind follows from the law of perception. If marketing is a battle of perception, not product, then the mind takes precedence over the marketplace. Thousands of would-be entrepreneurs are tripped up every year by this law. Someone has an idea or a concept they believe will revolutionize an industry, as well it may. The problem is getting the idea or concept into the prospect's mind. The conventional solution to the problem is money. That is, the resources to design and build product or service organizations, plus the resources to hold press conferences, attend trade shows, run advertisements, and conduct direct mail programs. Unfortunately, this gives rise to the perception that the answer to all marketing questions is the same: money. Not true. More money is wasted in marketing than in any other human activity outside of government activities, of course. Once someone else gets into your prospect's mind, you can't take away their position with money alone. You can't change a mind once a mind is made up. Wang was first in word processors, but the world passed them by and went on to computers. Wang, however, wasn't able to make the transition. In spite of spending millions of dollars promoting their personal and mini computers, Wang is still perceived as a word processor company. Xerox was the first in copiers and then tried to get into the computer business. 25 years and $2 billion later, Xerox has made very little progress in computers. You want to change something in a computer? Just type over or delete the existing material. You want to change something in a mind? Forget it. Once a mind is made up, it rarely, if ever, changes. The single most wasteful thing you can do in marketing is to try to change a human mind. If you want to make a big impression on another person, you cannot worm your way into their mind and then slowly build up a favorable opinion over a period of time. The mind doesn't work that way. You have to blast your way into the mind. The reason you blast instead of worm is that people don't like to change their minds. Once they perceive you one way, that's it. They kind of file you away in their minds as a certain type of person. You cannot become a different person in their minds. The only way to change that perception is to become a different kind of person in someone else's mind, so that the majority overwhelms the minority. If one finds they are out of touch with the majority, they will sometimes change their mind. But you haven't changed their mind, other people have. One of the mysteries in marketing is the role of money. One day a few dollars can work a major miracle. The next day, millions of dollars can't save a company from going under. When you have an open mind to work with, even a small amount of money can go a long way. Apple got off the computer ground with $91,000 contributed by Mike Markula. Today, Apple is not only a survivor, but also the leading brand of home personal computer. Apple's problem of getting into the mind was helped by its simple, easy-to-remember name. On the other hand, Apple's competitors had complicated names which were difficult to remember. In the early days, 5 personal computers were in position on the launching pad: Apple II, Commodore PET, IMSA 8080, MIT's Altair 8800, and the Radio Shack TRS-80. Ask yourself, which name is the simplest and easiest to remember? And then ask Commodore, IMSA, MIT's, and Radio Shack why they didn't give their products a simpler name. The laws of marketing are simple. The ability of the human race to complicate things knows no bounds.
4. The law of perception. Marketing is not a battle of products, it's a battle of perceptions. Many people think marketing is a battle of products. In the long run, the best product will win. Marketing people are preoccupied with doing research and getting the facts. They analyze the situation to make sure that truth is on their side. Then they sail confidently into the marketing arena, secure in the knowledge that they have the best product and that ultimately the best product will win. Truth is nothing more or less than one expert's perception. And this expert's truth itself is only a perception. And who is the expert? It's someone who is perceived to be an expert in the mind of somebody else. If truth is so elusive, why is there so much discussion in marketing about the facts? Marketing people focus on facts because they believe in objective reality. It's also easy for marketing people to assume that truth is on their side. If you think you need the best product to win a marketing battle, then it's easy to believe you have the best product. All that's required is a minor modification of your own perceptions. Changing a prospect's mind is another matter. People are seldom, if ever, wrong, at least in their own minds. It's easy to see the power of perception over product when the products are separated by some distance. For example, the three largest selling Japanese imported cars in America are Honda, Toyota, and Nissan. Most marketing people think the battle between the three brands is based on quality, styling, horsepower, and price. Not true. It's what people think about a Honda, a Toyota, or a Nissan that determines which brand will win. Marketing is a battle of perceptions. Japanese automobile manufacturers sell the same cars in the United States as they do in Japan. If marketing were a battle of products, you would think that the same sales order would hold true for both countries. After all, the same quality, the same styling, the same horsepower, and roughly the same prices hold true for Japan as they do for the United States. But in Japan, Honda is nowhere near the leader. There, Honda is in third place behind Toyota and Nissan. Toyota sells more than 4 times as many automobiles in Japan as Honda does. What's the difference between Honda in Japan and Honda in the U.S.? The products are the same, but the perceptions in the mind are different. If you told friends in New York you bought a Honda, they might ask you, what kind of car did you get? Did you get a Civic, an Accord, or a Prelude? If you told friends in Tokyo you bought a Honda, they might ask you, what kind of motorcycle did you buy? In Japan, Honda got into the mind as a manufacturer of motorcycles, and apparently most people don't want to buy a car from a motorcycle company. Marketing is a battle of perceptions, not products. Marketing is the process of dealing with those perceptions. Some soft drink executives believe that marketing is a battle of taste. Well, New Coke is number 1 in taste. The Coca-Cola Company conducted 200,000 taste tests that proved that New Coke tastes better than Pepsi-Cola, and Pepsi tastes better than their original formula, now called Coca-Cola Classic. So who is winning the marketing battle? The one that research has proven to taste the best, New Coke, is in third place. The one that research shows tastes the worst, Coca-Cola Classic, is in first place. You believe what you want to believe. You taste what you want to taste. Soft drink marketing is a battle of perceptions, not a battle of taste. What makes the battle even more difficult is that customers frequently make buying decisions based on second-hand perceptions. Instead of their own perceptions, they base their buying decisions on someone else's perception of reality. This is the everybody knows principle. Everybody knows that the Japanese make higher quality cars than Americans do. If you had a bad experience with a Japanese car, you were just unlucky, because everybody knows the Japanese make high-quality cars. Conversely, if you had a good experience with an American car, you were just lucky, because everybody knows that American cars are poorly made. Marketing is not a battle of products, it's a battle of perceptions.
5. The law of focus. The most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the mind. Not a complicated word, not an invented one. The simpler words are best, words taken right out of the dictionary. This is the law of focus. You burn your way into the mind by narrowing the focus to a single word or concept. It's the ultimate marketing sacrifice. Federal Express was able to put the word overnight into the mind because it sacrificed its product line and focused on overnight package delivery only. In a way, the law of leadership, it's better to be first than to be better, enables the first brand or company to own a word in the mind. But the word the leader owns is so simple, it's invisible. The leader owns the word that stands for the category. IBM owns computer in the mind. This is another way of saying that the brand becomes a generic name for the category. You can also test the validity of a leadership claim by a word association test. If the given words are computer, copier, chocolate bar, and cola, the 4 most associated words are IBM, Xerox, Hershey's, and Coke. An astute leader will go one step further to solidify their position. Heinz owns the word ketchup in the mind. But Heinz went on to isolate the most important ketchup attribute. Slowest ketchup in the West is how Heinz is preempting the thickness attribute. Owning the word slow helps Heinz maintain a 50% market share. If you're not a leader, then your word has to have a narrow focus. Even more important, however, your word has to be available in your category. No one else can have a lock on it. The essence of marketing is narrowing the focus. You become stronger when you reduce the scope of your operations. You can't stand for something if you chase after everything. When you develop your word to focus on, be prepared to fend off the lawyers. They want to trademark everything you publish. The trick is to get others to use your word. To be a leader, you have to have followers. It would be helpful for Lotus to have other companies get into the groupware business. It will make the category more important, and people will be impressed with Lotus's leadership. Once you have your word, you have to go out of your way to protect it in the marketplace. The case of BMW illustrates this very well. For years, they were the ultimate driving machine. Then they decided to broaden their product line and chase Mercedes-Benz with large 700 series sedans. The problem is, how can a living room on wheels be the ultimate driving machine? Not only can't you feel the road, but you'll also crush all the pylons in your driving commercials. As a result, things started downhill for BMW. Luckily, they have recently introduced a new small BMW and are emphasizing driving once again. They have regained their focus. The law of focus applies to whatever you're selling or even unselling, like drugs, for example. The anti-drug crusade on television and in magazines suffers from a lack of focus. There is no one word driven into the minds of drug users that could begin to unsell the drug concept. Anti-drug advertising is all over the map. You'd think the anti-drug forces, who after all are professionals, would have taken a leaf from the amateurs who are fighting the abortion issue. Both sides of the abortion issue have focused on single, powerful words, pro-life and pro-choice. The anti-drug forces should do the same. Focus on a single, powerful word. What the campaign ought to do is to make drugs what cigarettes are today, socially unacceptable. One word that could do this is the ultimate down word, loser. Since drug usage causes all kinds of losses, job, family, self-esteem, freedom, life, a program that said drugs are for losers could have a powerful impact, especially on the recreational user who is more concerned with social status. The law of focus could help solve one of society's biggest problems.
6. The law of exclusivity. Two companies cannot own the same word in the prospect's mind. Volvo owns safety. Many other automobile companies, including Mercedes-Benz and General Motors, have tried to run marketing campaigns based on safety. Yet no one has succeeded in getting into the prospect's mind with a safety message except Volvo. Many companies continue to violate the law of exclusivity. What often leads marketers down this booby-trapped lane is that wonderful stuff called research. Armies of researchers are employed, focus groups conducted, questionnaires tabulated, and what comes back in a 3-pound report is a wish list of attributes that users want from a product or service. So if that's what people want, that's what we should give them. Some years ago, Burger King started down this slippery slope from which they have never quite recovered. A market study showed that the most popular attribute for fast food was fast. No big surprise there. So Burger King did what most red-blooded marketers do. They turned to their advertising agency and said, if the world wants fast, our advertising should tell them that we're fast. What was overlooked in the research was the fact that McDonald's was perceived as being the fastest hamburger chain in the country. Fast was McDonald's word. Undaunted by this, Burger King launched their campaign with the slogan, Best Food for Fast Times. The program quickly became a disaster, very nearly on a par with Herb. The advertising agency was fired, management was fired, the company was sold, and downward momentum was maintained. A large number of people paid the price for violating the law of exclusivity.
7. The law of the ladder. The strategy to use depends on which rung you occupy on the ladder. While getting into the mind first ought to be your primary marketing objective, the battle isn't lost if you fail in this endeavor. There are strategies to use for number 2 and number 3 brands. All products are not created equal. There's a hierarchy in the mind that prospects use in making decisions. For each category, there is a product ladder in the mind. On each rung is a brand name. Take the car rental category. Hertz got into the mind first and wound up on the top rung. Avis got into the mind second, and National got into the mind third. Your marketing strategy should depend on how soon you got into the mind, and consequently which rung of the ladder you occupy. The higher the better, of course. Take Avis, for example. For years, Avis advertised the high quality of its rent-a-car service. Finest in rent-a-cars was one of their campaigns. The reader looked at the ad and said, "How could they have the finest rent-a-car service when they're not on the top rung of my ladder?" Then Avis did the one thing you have to do to make progress inside the mind of the prospect. They acknowledged their position on the ladder. Avis is only number 2 in rent-a-cars, so why go with us? We try harder. For 13 years in a row, Avis had lost money. Then they admitted they were number 2, and Avis started to make money, lots of money. Shortly thereafter, the company was sold to ITT, who promptly ordered the advertising theme, "Avis is going to be number 1. "No, they're not," said the prospect. "They're not on the top rung of my ladder." And to make the point, many picked up the phone and called Hertz. The campaign was a disaster. Many marketing people have misread the Avis story. They assumed the company was successful because it tried harder. They had better service. Not at all. Avis was successful because it related itself to the position of Hertz in the mind. If trying harder were the secret of success, Harold Stassen would have been president many times over. The mind is selective. Prospects use their ladders in deciding which information to accept and which information to reject. In general, a mind accepts only new data, which is consistent with their product ladder in that category. Everything else is ignored. What about your product's ladder in the prospect's mind? How many rungs are there on your ladder? It depends on whether your product is a high-interest or a low-interest product. Products you use every day like cigarettes, cola, beer, toothpaste, and cereal tend to be high-interest products with many rungs on their ladders. Products which are purchased infrequently, like furniture, lawnmowers, and luggage, usually have few rungs on their ladders. Products which involve a great deal of personal pride, like automobiles, watches, and cameras, are also high-interest products with many rungs on their ladders, even though they are purchased infrequently. Products which are purchased infrequently and involve an unpleasant experience usually have very few rungs on their ladders. Automobile batteries, tires, and life insurance are 3 examples. Marketing people often talk about the 3 leading brands in a category, as if it were a battle of equals. It almost never is. The leader inevitably dominates the number 2 brand, and the number 2 brand inevitably smothers number 3. In baby food, it's Gerber, Beechnut, and Heinz. In beer, it's Budweiser, Miller, and Coors. In long-distance telephone service, it's AT&T, MCI, and Sprint. What's the maximum number of rungs on a ladder? There seems to be a rule of 7 in the prospect's mind. Ask someone to name all the brands he or she remembers in a given category. Rarely will anyone name more than 7, and that's for a high-interest category. For a low-interest product, the average consumer can usually name no more than 2 or 3 brands. Sometimes your own ladder or category is too small. It might be better to be a small fish in a big pond than to be a big fish in a small pond. It's sometimes better to be number 3 on a big ladder than number 1 on a small ladder. 7-Up was on the top rung of the lemon-lime soda ladder. Sprite was on the second rung. In the soft drink field, however, the cola ladder is much bigger than the lemon-lime ladder. So 7-Up climbed on the cola ladder with a marketing campaign called the Un-Cola. By linking the product to what was already in the mind of the prospect, 7-Up established itself as an alternative to Coke and Pepsi. As tea is to coffee, 7-Up became the alternative to a cola drink, and 7-Up sales climbed to where the brand was the third largest selling soft drink in America.
8. The law of duality. In the long run, every market becomes a two-horse race. Early on, a new category becomes a ladder of many rungs. Gradually over time, the ladder becomes a two-rung affair. When you take the long view of marketing, you find the battle usually winds up as a titanic struggle between two major players, usually the old reliable brand and the upstart. Look at the three long-distance telephone companies. AT&T has 62% of the market, MCI has 15%, and Sprint has 9%. Who will win and who will lose in the telephone wars? While the future is unknowable, a betting person would put his or her money on MCI. MCI won the battle with Sprint for second place. Now MCI ought to become the upstart alternative to old, reliable AT&T. Sprint is probably feeling very comfortable on the third rung of the ladder. 9% doesn't sound like much, but it translates into $6 billion in annual sales. And the market has been growing rapidly. Long term, however, Sprint is in serious trouble. Look what happened to Royal Crown Cola. Back in 1969, the Royal Crown Company revitalized its franchise system, 350 bottlers strong, and hired the former president of rival pet foods and a veteran of both Coke and Pepsi. The company also retained Wells Rich Green, a high-powered New York advertising agency. "We're out to kill Coke and Pepsi," declared Mary Wells Lawrence, the agency's head, to Royal Crown bottlers. "I hope you'll excuse the word, but we're going out for the juggler." The only brand that got killed was Royal Crown. In a maturing industry, third place is a difficult place to be. Take the domestic automobile industry. In spite of heroic measures undertaken by Lee Iacocca, Chrysler is in trouble. In the long run, marketing is a two-car race. Take the airline industry. American Airlines, with 20% of the market, got its nose out in front and will probably wind up as the Coca-Cola of the skies. The interesting battle is between Delta and United, tied at 18% apiece. One of these two will take off like Pepsi, and the other is headed down with Royal Crown. In the long run, marketing is a two-airline race. Successful marketers concentrate on the top two rungs. Jack Welch, the legendary chairman and CEO of General Electric, said recently, "Only businesses that are number one or number two in their markets could win in the increasingly competitive global arena. Those that could not were fixed, closed, or sold." It's this kind of thinking that built companies like Procter & Gamble into the powerhouses they are. In 32 of its 44 product categories in the U.S., P&G commands the number one or number two brands. Early on in the developing market, the number 3 or number 4 positions look attractive. Sales are increasing. New, relatively unsophisticated customers are coming into the market. These customers don't always know which brands are the leaders, so they pick ones that look interesting or attractive. Quite often, these turn out to be the number 3 or number 4 brands. As time goes on, however, these customers get educated. They want the leading brand, on the naive assumption that the leading brand must be better.
9. The law of the opposite. If you're shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. In strength there is weakness. Wherever the leader is strong is an opportunity for a would-be number 2 to turn the tables. Much like a wrestler uses his opponent's strength against him, a company should leverage the leader's strength into a weakness. If you want to establish a firm foothold on the second rung of the ladder, study the firm above you. Where are they strong? And how do you turn that strength into a weakness? You must discover the essence of the leader and then present the prospect with the opposite. Don't try to be better, be different. Coca-Cola is a 100-year-old product. Only 7 people in the history of the world know the Coke formula, which is kept locked in a safe in Atlanta. Using the law of the opposite, Pepsi-Cola reversed the essence of Coca-Cola to become the choice of a new generation, the Pepsi generation. When you look at a given product category, there seems to be 2 kinds of people. There are people who want to buy from the leader, and there are people who don't want to buy from the leader. A potential number 2 brand has to appeal to the latter group. In other words, by positioning yourself against the leader, you take business away from all the other alternatives to number 1. If old people drink Coke and young people drink Pepsi, there's nobody left to drink Royal Crown Cola. Yet too many potential number 2 brands try to emulate the leader. This is usually an error. You must present yourself as the alternative. Marketing is often a battle for legitimacy. The first brand that captures the concept is often able to portray its competitors as illegitimate pretenders. A good number 2 can't afford to be timid. When you give up focusing on number 1, you make yourself vulnerable not only to the leader, but to the rest of the pack. Take the sad story of Burger King in recent years. Times have been difficult for this number 2 in hamburgers. They've been through many management changes, new owners, and a parade of advertising agencies. It doesn't take much of a history review to see what went wrong. Burger King's most successful years came when they were on the attack. They opened the attack with Have It Your Way, which twitted McDonald's mass manufacturing approach to hamburgers. Then they hit them with broiling, not frying, and the Whopper beats the Big Mac. All these programs reinforced the number 2 alternative position. Then, for some unknown reason, Burger King ignored the law of the opposite. They got timid and stopped attacking McDonald's. The world was introduced to Herb the Nerd, the best food for fast times, we do it the way you do it, you've got to break the rules, and so on. They even started a program to attract little kids, the mainstay of McDonald's strength. This is no way to stay a strong number 2. Burger King's sales per unit declined and have never returned to the level they were when they were on the attack. They made the mistake of not taking the opposite tack.
10. The law of division. Like amoeba dividing in a petri dish, the marketing arena can be viewed as an ever-expanding sea of categories. A category starts off as a single entity, computers, for example. But over time, the category breaks up into other segments: mainframes, mini-computers, workstations, personal computers, laptops, notebooks, pen computers. Like the computer, the automobile started off as a single category. 3 brands, Chevrolet, Ford, and Plymouth, dominated the market. Then the category divided. Today we have luxury cars, moderately priced cars, and inexpensive cars. Full-size, intermediates, and compacts. Sports cars, 4-wheel drive vehicles, RVs, and minivans. Each segment is a separate, distinct entity. Each segment has its own reason for existence. And each segment has its own leader, which is rarely the same as the leader of the original category. The way for the leader to maintain its dominance is to address each emerging category with a different brand name, as General Motors did in the early days with Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, and Cadillac. Companies often make a mistake when they try to take a well-known brand name in one category and use the same brand name in another category. A classic example is the fate that befell Volkswagen, the company that introduced the small car category to America.